All right, well, today's Saturday, August 31st. I have exactly 20 days to get this ready to go and to Illinois for RatStock 2024. I was really hoping that today what we do is get the body off the chassis, mount the shocks, put the wiring harness on and see if it'll fire up again. And then we got a lot more work to do, hooking the brakes up again, getting the steering finalized, and all the lighting and minor things here and there. So, might as well just get right to work. All right, well, Saturday morning started out swell. I was drilling the brackets to mount the rear seat, and I burned the tip of my index finger, so that was awesome. This is the shock relocation kit from AirBag. That seems like it's got pretty much everything except, yeah, I only got 2 of these to mount it to the axle. I probably need 4. I got 2 of those. I need 4. I got these 2 things, and per my reading online, this is going to drill right through the lower control arm, and then this bolt goes through the lower control arm for the bottom of the shock. These are the brackets to mount it to the frame, which seem pretty stout, but the holes in this don't allow this in there. So we're going to have to probably grind a little bit of this away so that the center of this hole lines up with the center of this hole. Also, I don't have time to wait for new stuff. Fortunately, when I was at the steel place, I did get some plate steel, not for this purpose, but what I'm going to do is just trace those out, and we're just going to cut some new ones of our own. So we have 2 pairs, which is more work for me to do. I would rather just have those so I can weld them on, but hey, here we are. We got 20 days to go. I don't have time to order new stuff and wait for it to get shipped here. So we're gonna start ripping into this after I get the body off of the chassis. Just for a close-up of what I was talking about, this is the part that will attach to the frame up front, and you can see pretty close, but that bumps into the housing on the shock here. And there's no 2 ways about it. That does not line up, no matter where you put this. So, well, you know, gotta roll with it. We'll fix it. All right, I'm not gonna claim that I am the originator of this idea. I'm gonna put a link into a video from Rat Rods for Africa. Awesome video on how to mount and set up your shocks for your airbag suspension. Dude's awesome, works on by himself, awesome content, so go check that out. But in regard to what I'm going to do, because I have to cut more of this is 1/4-inch plate. I don't know that my plasma cutter can cut what I have, so I'm going to try. If it doesn't work, then I'm just going to use the template and use my grinder and cut it out, and then we'll grind the edges of them both so that they are the exact same size. But what I'm going to do is take this piece of just 1/4-inch plywood, and I'm going to cut the template. I'm going to cut about, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch on the inside of my tracing here, because when I use the edge of the plasma cutter along that, it will then make it pretty darn close to the exact size of what I need. And then I will have to grind both of them smooth. So it kind of sucks that I have to do extra work, but at least I had some metal on hand that I can make 2 more of these and 2 more of those, because I really need to get work done this weekend. So I'm gonna cut these out, and then we will use our templates to cut the plate stock to match that. All right, so the templates are cut out. What I was referring to is I wanted to undersize my template by a little bit. I used just under 1/4 of an inch. And the reason for that is when you've got the plasma cutter on the metal, your template is gonna need to be a little bit smaller. So as the electrode is going around this, it's not gonna make, because if I use the actual thing and I cut it out, then it would be too big if I followed this all the way around. So you saw me cut that out. I undersized it. I didn't do any measuring. I just kind of eyeballed it. Because of my experience with this, I know that it's approximately 1/4 of an inch. So we're gonna go ahead and cut these out. Well, I do have to say that I am pretty impressed with this little Cut 40 from Jegs. It's done me pretty well. You can see here I got my sandwich of my template and the material underneath. You can see how there's that overlap there. So what I will do now is I'm going to clamp this one to this one, and then we will use the grinder to smooth out the edges. And then I will clamp them together and I'll drill that hole exactly through that one in the same spot. So now I just got to cut out the smaller one, and my supply shortage is fixed, except for the fact that they also did not send any hardware for the rear shocks. So I'm gonna have to go to the hardware store for that. Well, it's the better part of an hour later. After cutting, grinding, and everything, I've got my pairs of tabs now. They're probably ultimately going to need to be cut to size lengthwise, but whatever. I got to drill some holes in these, and then we can, you know, make some progress. That I wasn't planning on that being part of my day, so slows me down a bit, but you know, got to keep moving along. So there was no way that I was going to be able to order new tabs and wait for them to get here. So, all right, let's just go. Gotta tell you, the guy's pretty lucky to get sandwich delivered out to the workshop. Absolutely everything I do around here makes a mess. Now we've got holes and we can actually start doing some work. So I'm gonna clean this up, and then, you know, we'll put the car up and see if we can actually start mounting some shocks. Okay, so a little bit of a dilemma. So on the left side, we've got what was sold to me as the rear shocks, and I've got zip ties in that one there, so it's maximally compressed and that's maximally extended. These are what were the front shocks, maximally compressed and maximally extended. This is the shock mount tower that they gave me. So the issue is, if I put this up here, right about there, now I can clearly cut that and modify it so it would match the shorter of these shocks, because the distance from the lower control arm to there, well, it's pretty far. It's actually farther than the small compressed front shock and the maximally extended front shock, like such, if I just put it in there. Right like that. So, no problem, I could cut the shock tower and then lower it, and then this would fit in there, maximally extended. The car is on the hoist right now, so I could definitely cut the shock tower thing they gave me so that it never gets past the maximally extended shorter shock. Now, here is the rear shock, which of course is much longer, but actually I would never want to max it out. Now, hanging from the lift here, of course you can imagine that the airbags are going to be in full droop as far down as they're going to go. So having a little bit of extra is okay with me. If I take the one that's maximally compressed, I'll have to see, but when I put this on the ground, obviously the lower control arm is going to come up, but if it does not exceed the maximum compression, then we're good. The issue is going to be in the rear, and I'll show you that. So I have car on the lift, you know, extra science happening here. Don't worry, you can see the strap hanging down there. The axle is ratchet strapped up. It's not going to drop on my noggin. Lift is locked. and were jacked up just so I could simulate. All right, when the bags are all the way down, let's get under here. There's not much room down here. Not much room at all. So when I am maximally aired out, there's no way those longer shocks would fit here. So I again, zip ties with this, and I put on the axle mount brackets, and I think I can get it to fit in there. So what I'm going to do is actually use the shocks in the not the intended place where they were going to, or where the company planned on me using them, just because I don't think they knew that I was going to put those things onto an S10 that is now part of a 1937 Master. So I think that'll work there. So what we're going to do is now we'll get the car off of this, put it down. I've got my jack stands here because whenever I put the car down, it's so low that I can't get the lift arms out. So what I'm going to do is drop the frame onto those, move the lift arms under the body, and lift the body off so that we can then work on suspension stuff and the wiring. Good day to be in the workshop. Well, I really hope that this is forward progress, but it's up. I got it just for stability. I put the ratchet strap through the cab. So we got to finish up some things on the frame here. Like I said, while we're down here, we're going to do the rear shock mounts, going to do the front shock mounts. Oh yeah, by the way, you know, I was going back and forth making sure we got everything unhooked. The last thing I didn't check, brake lines that were brand new. So luckily I caught that at the last second and disconnected those. So yeah, we're going to clean up the transmission cross member, box in that cross member, shock mounts, all the things while this is here. And then while this is up here, I think I'm just going to throw some seam sealer in there and probably some undercoating, bed liner, or something like that. All right, well, probably looks no different to you, but what I did is I ground off these body mounts where the S10, that used to poke out a lot further, and it really got in the way when we were trying to mount the body on the sill. So what I'm going to do now is, since I got that done, I'm going to kind of come up in here. The nuts that will mount our seat on the bottom here, I'm going to tack them to the bottom of the floor. So again, when we're mounting the seats, we don't have to worry about trying to grab underneath there, hold the nut on while we're putting the bolt in from the top. I'm also going to, there's a couple little areas on this that I want to fill in with some weld. So I'm going to do that for a little bit before I get to the shock mounts. Well, again, you didn't miss much. I've been kind of struggle bussing it here for a moment. But what I did do is hook up the regulator valve system for the airbags. So they're currently aired up at 50 PSI. I tried looking up online, what are people running in an S10? Some of them upwards of 100, which I thought was crazy, but that's the way it is. Now, I don't have the body on here. Obviously, that would add some stiffness to the frame and a lot of compression to the bags. But I also kind of forgot how low this thing is when you actually air it out. So when it's down, it's down. Well, I know it's a disaster area in here, but you can see now we've got the frame down as low as it'll go. And what I was doing back here is I'm trying to figure out which shocks to run where. The issue is not the, well, it's all of it. If I've got my larger shocks here and I put it in there, impossible to do one-handed. The issue is that I run into the maximum end point of the shock. If I run the smaller one, I end up running into the maximum out. So I'm gonna have to find a happy medium. This is aired all the way down, frames on the axle, can't go any lower than that. So I think I am actually gonna change my mind and I'm gonna put the longer rear shocks in the rear, just because when you're at ride height, you're gonna max that out. And I guess, I don't know. Gonna have to commit to something here. It's already late afternoon and basically all I got is a frame on the ground. So gonna have to commit to something here. Maybe I'll just put the rear ones in there, kind of tack them on and see what they look like. Well, I know when I'm getting tired or hangry or whatever, because the shop starts looking like this with crap all over the place, tools all over the place, can't find the tools I want. Anyways, those nice tabs that we made before, well, I said screw it, that was one of them. I cut it off to look like this. So the reason is I gotta have my lower shock mount like that to get this shock up here so that it doesn't bind. So this is a first test for me. So you're gonna watch this fail or work. I'm gonna cut my zip ties that I have compressing that shock so I can check and see if this is gonna work. And then we will try inflating the airbags and seeing what happens. So this is just loosely held in there. The bolts that are in there are not the right size. So this is just let's see what happens here. All right, so my zip ties are cut. I'm gonna fill this with air and we're gonna see what happens here. And if it does work, I'm gonna need to buy hardware. I'm gonna need to cut those off of there, cut this one off so that I can make the rest of them match this and try and simulate that angle over there. So here goes nothing. Zoom out, airing up. Okay, I need more than one tack weld there. But hey, shock is extending. Okay, so as the shock extends, it's pushing those bottom ones down. We're up to 40 PSI and our shock is extended. And that gives us a ride height, well, at least the frame. The frame will be something like 8 inches off the ground. 7.5. That's not bad. I don't know what the max is on the, well, actually, here's the other shock. Let's see how close we are to maxing that out. So that's pretty much max right there. So if we use 40 PSI as our reference range for ride height, which we got over there, all right, I guess that's kind of the position the shock's gonna live in. So I will cut these pieces off here, cut these pieces off down there, go to the hardware store and get some hardware for the shocks, because by the time I'm done with that, it's going to be hardware store closing time and I want to be able to work on this later. So yeah, all right, well, at least we got a shock in, or figured out where it's going to live. All right, well, had dinner. thought about this for a little bit, and I didn't like the way I had it before, so I decided I would cut a notch in the tab and run it underneath this square tube. So I think that, if the shock's pushing up, then at least, it's got I made it so you can see under here, right? It's kind of cradled in that brace bracket thing. So then if I air it down, I got the bags at 50 PSI now. Drop in the front. Okay, drop in the back. Okay, so that's maxed out. So that's the maximal compression of the shock. I think it looks okay. So I'm gonna cut the rest of the tabs like such and weld them in. Well, I will just let you look at the massacre that is the garage floor right at the moment to judge how things went. I did not have fun tonight. I really, really did not have fun tonight. I did get 2 shocks mounted. I think I did something wrong because this side of the car now sits up maybe a ½ inch higher. So I'm assuming that means that I welded that bracket on there different than I welded that one on. I did put these diagonal supports in for some reason. I don't know. Gave me something to do when I was frustrated with the rest of it. Overall, you probably hear the tone of my voice that I'm pretty fed up with it at the moment. I wanted to get the fronts done as well. That didn't happen. So maybe tomorrow, I don't know, but it sure is not going to be tonight. All right, well, last night, that was rough. Your host here was not having a good night. I did get the rear shocks mounted and welded in. I didn't record much last night or yesterday, I don't think. And I'm kind of glad that I didn't. You would have just watched me struggle and it really, really wouldn't have been good. So I would highly recommend that if you want to watch someone teach you how to install your shocks on your airbag suspension, definitely go check out Rods for Africa. Way better editing, way better technique. And so this place, it's a mess. So before I start the day today, I'm going to clean up in here a little bit and then we'll get started on the front. I guess that's it. That's a Sunday morning update. It's Labor Day weekend, so officially have less than 20 days to get this ready. So got to really get moving. So not a lot. I'll take you in there after I get everything cleaned up, and I'll show you what I did. Because I know at the end of the night last night it was approaching midnight, and I was in a foul mood. I was very tired and frustrated. So, anyways, I'm gonna clean up, and then I'll show you kind of show you what I did with the shock mounts. So, give me a couple minutes. All right, well, there's a lot less chaos happening, so I feel a lot better about things. So what did I accomplish last night? Well, like I said at the end of the video, at the very end of last night, I put these supports in. Why? I don't know. At the moment, I really was frustrated with trying to figure out the angle that I needed to put my shocks at. So I thought I would brace it up a little bit. Anyways, we are at full extension on the rear shocks. They are fully welded in, and they're not going anywhere. Probably the ugliest welds I have done on this project so far. But anyways, they are goobered together solidly. The issue that I said was this side here, actually I measured, it's probably more like 1/4 inch higher. Whatever, it's staying the way it is. So what we're gonna work on today is the front shock mounts, and hopefully things go a little bit better. But anyways, this is kind of the, situation right now. So obviously a lot more to do, and we don't have time to waste doing this stuff. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw some flat black on those things. And while that's drying, we're going to go up front and work on those shock mounts. All right, well, dressed up a little bit. That looks actually kind of cool. I mean, totally unnecessary to do that probably, but hey, makes me feel better. So, rebuilt and ready for sale on Craigslist. All right, so here we are at the front end of the vehicle, and I've got our wheel maximally turned to the left. One of the things I was reading online is how terrible it is to do airbags on an S10. Actually said it was a Motor Trend article, and it was very, I read it and I was like, oh my God, what have I got myself into? So this is just the front shock tower that they sent me. Now it's way too tall. I can tell you that because here is our front shock maximally extended. And if it's gonna mount to the lower control arm, it's taller than that already. So we're gonna have to cut that probably in half so that I can get the shock mounted in there. I'm going to turn the wheel, put this on the tripod so I can explain a little bit better. All right, so we're set up at the front of the vehicle here. This is the shock mount that I got from the AirBag company, and these are the front shocks. And I can tell you already that I'm going to have to cut this probably in half because this is maximal extension on the front shock. And if I just put it in there, it's supposed to mount to the lower control arm. I know you can't see it from there, but if I hold that approximately where it would go, and I hold this approximately where it would go, we're already maxed out on that shock. So when we're aired up, this is as high as it gets. If I compress this, that's pretty short, maybe 8 or 9 inches. So if I put that in there at 8 or 9 inches and just kind of hold it there, we're like way low down on the frame. So we're going to have to cut this substantially. I was reading an article on Motor Trend. It was the first thing that I looked up when I was looking up airbags for S10, and how many people say that it's a terrible job and there's no room for it. And then when you go lock to lock on your steering, if I turn this, okay, so that's locked to the left. They were all saying about how people were notching the frame there just so they could get the shock mounted. But if I put that in there, it actually has, if I eyeball that, we'll call it an inch of room. So I think we're going to be okay without having to notch the frame there, because this standoff here pushes it away from the frame anyways. So what I'm going to need to do is compress one of these, hold it together with zip ties so I can see the lowest, because right now we're aired all the way down. See what the lowest point is, and that's going to be the baseline for our setup. So let me go right now, zip tie that so I can get a measurement, so I can tell the height that this needs to be cut to. All right, well, looks like if I cut it there, looks like that's pretty low, and I'm taking a lot of that bracket off of there. But if I put this in here and kind of simulate it, yeah, it needs to be pretty low. I did put the hardware in there, and I kind of marked out on the lower control arm where I need to poke a hole through there, and that should give me just enough room. Now that brake line's close, it's just that nickel copper stuff. So what I can do is I can actually undo that, and I can route it over the top if needed. If I feel like I'm too close, I can just take it off the fitting here, and bend it the other way. We'll see. For now, I think I'm going to grind off some of this goobery stuff, and then we will cut this and come back and see where we match up. Also, another thing that I remembered is that no matter where I put this, the holes don't line up, so we need to take off a little bit of this edge of this shock tower mount thing so that we can center our hole and allow our shock to travel back and forth, because nowhere in this radius does it actually center on that hole. Well, this seemed to fit okay, and I was grinding that off with the wire wheel just so I could tack some welds on that to hold it there to determine where we make a hole in the lower control arm. And dumbass with the grinder poked a hole right in my freaking airline, and I have no idea how to get at that other than it's in there somewhere. So what does that mean? Does that mean I have to take the whole control arm off of here to get at it? I don't know. I've never had an airbag set up. I would guess that the only way I'm getting at that is by taking a whole bunch of crap apart. Genius move. All right, well, rookie mistake there for sure. But this came out not too bad. Just take the bolt off the top and then on the bottom. Probably looks like I should have redone this anyways. Somebody goobered on a whole bunch of, I don't know if that's Teflon tape or what kind of goobery stuff they got going on there. So we'll cut this a little bit shorter wherever I made the hole in there and redo the fittings here because that's kind of grody. All right, well, that was 30 minutes of stupidness. You can actually see my sweat here dripping from struggling getting that back in. I did not like this airline, since I just went through that, rubbing on the metal here, so I decided I'd just take some 3/8 fuel line, just because I wouldn't want that to happen while we're driving down the road. So I feel better about that. I'll probably do it on the passenger side as well. So got the line rerun. It does hold air, so yay, yay. Little victories, I guess. So got the shock mount here, like such. So we're gonna mock that up, maybe get some tacks on it. All right, well, I got a quick tack on that. What I'm gonna do is air it down, and then I'll throw in the one that's maximally compressed and make sure that we're not bottomed out, and go from there. All right, frame's on the ground and we're good. I mean, it's gonna move that out a little bit. It's gonna be at the very bottom of the control arm, which is fine with me. So we're good to go. All right, another executive decision was made. I don't like this big hole here and here. There's holes all over the frame, it's crazy. So I made this plate that I'm gonna stick here. I'm gonna weld this. Well, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna weld this piece to this and then put the whole thing on here and weld this so I get a good bead along all sides of that, because it is gonna overhang a little bit so that I get the alignment down here right. So what I'm gonna do is glue these two pieces together. Well, I've said it before, is it a dumb idea if it works? This is my temporary little workstation here. Just got my piece that I'm gonna weld up on that plate stock. So let's burn that in and then get the front shock done. Well, I certainly hope that I put that in the right place, because there's no getting it out now. So we're gonna let that cool off for a little bit. And I think that I'm done for today, actually, because I got an early birthday gift and going to a concert. So we'll just leave the place a mess again. I'll come back to it later. Good Sunday morning. Well, came out here early and got this shock fully mounted here. So that's good to go. Got to come over to this side. I'm going to do the same thing, since now I know how to take the airbag out. I'm going to take that out so we can protect this line here, because that makes me feel kind of sketchy as frig with that just running through without anything protecting it. So we're going to put the rubber hose on that as well, and then we're going to repeat the same process over here. So I'm not going to bore you with the repetition of doing it, but when I'm done with that today, then while the chassis is resting like this on the ground, I will try putting the wiring harness back on to see if we can actually get this thing fired up again. Well, in the process of doing the front airbag thing, I came back here because I was going to redo the fittings. I was going to run the lines along the frame rails on both sides. And of course, you know, just because why not make things more difficult for myself? I broke that fitting right off of there when I was trying to get the tube off. So I had to go to the hardware store and buy a fitting and some more airline. So anyways, you know, just adds to the fun of the project here, I guess. Well, shock mount number 2 is fabricated. Gotta tell you what, learning to weld and teaching yourself is pretty fun. I think we got good penetration on that. I don't think that's ever gonna move. So let's go throw that in the car and then we can finalize the passenger side of the suspension. Weekend update. All right, we got the chassis outside. It's the first time it's seen the light of day in a while. I had to drop my daughter off at volleyball practice and I aired it up, pushed it out, and it stayed like this. So I guess that's good because it means that the airbags don't leak after fiddling around with them for a while. So chassis is rolling, suspension is done. So check that off the list. So what we've got to do over the next couple of days is going to be throw the harness back on there, make sure everything plugs back in. I highly doubt it'll start the first time I try it, but you know, I'm going to assume that I'm going to be missing grounds and doing things like that. I'm going to have to work on it for a while before I actually get it running. But if it fires up, we're going to be considering that a major win. So it is kind of crazy to think that I really want to drive this to Illinois in 2 weeks. So I hope that everything from this point forward goes smooth. We come back in here, I got this up here. What I'm going to do is just get some roll-on bed liner and I'm just gonna coat the bottom of this. I'm gonna do seam sealer, but this is the bottom of the car. I think that, you know, ultimately for being the first time I ever did anything like this, I'm pretty dang pleased with it. I think that the bead rolling on the floor went really well. I think that, you know, for, you know, fabricating at home, I'm pretty pleased with the progress. So what I'm going to do now is push this back in and yeah, I'll get back after it probably tomorrow and start working on that wiring harness. So I just wanted to check this out because I wasn't sure and I'll take it. Definitely gonna take it. Yeah. Well, it's Wednesday morning, early before work, and I mean, a little bit of good news. When I came out here 2 days ago, I aired up the airbags and the frame is still up, so that's a win. I'm gonna put this video out today, it's Wednesday, morning Zena, because I did get a lot done and the video was already over 30 minutes with editing, so I don't want these to drag into like hour-long things that people are just watching me build this car. But I do appreciate everyone watching and I appreciate the comments. So what I'm going to do this week is, now that the suspension is finalized, we got the shocks in, we got the airbags working, I'm going to do some seam sealing on the bottom of the car and roll-on bed liner stuff that I have left over. So I'm just gonna, just so I can treat the bottom of the car, and then what I'll do is plan on, I just really want to throw the wiring harness on. I'm gonna leave it like it is. I'm not gonna strip anything out of it. I'm just gonna plug in the numbers where I unplug them, and I'm gonna hope that it starts. And if it starts, I think I'm feeling pretty good about making it to RatStock, because if that's done, I finalize the steering. I got my U-joints from Summit. I mean, hey, then we're pretty dang close. So I'm really hoping that the wiring harness goes in pretty well. Thanks for whacking the cameras, you know. Yeah, dogs. So anyways, I appreciate everybody coming by, and I'll probably hopefully get another video out this weekend. So thanks for coming along for the ride. Appreciate it.